Hi everyone. I've had a few requests to do a video that takes a much closer look at Lunar Blue and her design features. Since I found it a bit hard to do a proper job of a boat tour whilst sailing on the water, I'm going to try something different and do a voiceover tour for those who are interested. So to recap the key dimensions of the boat, she is a touch over 16 feet long, which is about 5 metres in the metric system, and has a 6-foot beam or 1.8 metres. I don't know exactly how long the pivoting centreboard is, but it looks like it's about 4 feet or 1200 millimetres long. With the centreboard raised, she'll literally float in ankle deep water. The way the hull is designed with the plumb stem, nearly all of that hull length becomes waterline length. And she's rigged as a catboat with 140 square feet of sail area, which in my experience has been a handful to manage. I seem to have the best results sailing with the first reef in, which gives a bit over 100 square feet of sail area. In regards to the design, it's not documented in plans. If we go back to the beginning, the designer is Jim Inglis, who was a Queensland-based yacht designer, and he wanted a traditional clinker boat for himself, so he designed one, and it's named Girt by Sea. I imagine he did some drawings or sketches, but those are not published. He created a set of moulds on a strongback and then planked up the hull over those moulds. So those moulds ended up in the hands of the Wooden Boat Association in Queensland, and 2 more hulls were built. So Luna is hull number 3 and was built by Barrie Baker at the Sunshine Coast, who's one of the Wooden Boat members up there. Luna is a little different in that she has a cabin, and in order to get the aesthetics to look right, she has 1 extra plank to raise the sheer a bit more. She's constructed from 6mm marine ply, and it's a glued lapstrake construction. And all the planking below the waterline is sheathed in Dynel to give better abrasion resistance. The shape of the hull has been very carefully considered by Jim to give her really good speed through the water, and he was quite successful because I've regularly had her at over 6 knots in just 10 knot breezes. The keel is stringy bark, which is a tough Australian hardwood. The internal fit out of the hull adds a lot more strength, and everything was epoxy glued, epoxy filleted, and then had glass applied over those fillets for additional strength. The cockpit floor is raised above the waterline slightly, so it becomes self-draining. The cabin has had floors installed, once again to give strength to the hull, but it also creates a nice flat area for sleeping. And the sleeping platform actually extends in under the bridge deck. The mast tabernacle is incredibly strong due to its construction with epoxy and glass. It extends all the way to the keel and is fixed to the most forward bulkhead. The area in front of that bulkhead then becomes a self-draining anchor locker with a sloped floor above the waterline and 2 drains out either side. The mast is really interesting, and I've never seen anything like it. Essentially, it's an aluminium tube with segmented timber epoxied to it, and it's fully sealed top and bottom. The idea being that you get some strength and buoyancy from the aluminium tube, but you get the aesthetics from the wood. The mast was actually built by Jim Inglis himself, and it was given to Barrie for the rig fit out. So if we now move around the externals of the boat, starting at the transom, you can see the rudder is pretty standard with uphaul and downhaul. I've since added the Huntingford helm impeder to allow me to lock the tiller in any position. And there's a small outboard mount. Those white oval shapes at the bottom either side of the rudder are actually flaps for the cockpit scuppers. In the back end of the cockpit are the 2 scuppers that I just mentioned with hinged flaps, a foot strap anchor point, and there are 2 open storage areas right at the back, which is very handy for wet gear, fenders, fuel, etc. and they have little drains that drain into the cockpit floor. The fully enclosed seating on each side of the cockpit provides a lot of water resistant storage, which is accessed with 2 locker lids, one on each side. The lids were built in the spirit of the Corsound boat lockers, which have fully drained lids. I won't call them waterproof, but honestly I've not put a drop of water into those lockers yet, despite hosing the boat down several times. So the cockpit is large, it's functional, and it can easily accommodate 3 or 4 people. The cabin is really only suitable for 1 person and their gear, although 2 could theoretically fit in there as long as the gear was moved out into the cockpit. The cabin is extremely Spartan, but on a boat of this size, that's all you'll ever get. I've carpeted it now to make it feel a bit more homely, but there's plenty of space for someone tall like me to fit. I'm 6'2" and I can stretch out with my feet under the bridge deck, and my head still has an inch of clearance to the internal locker at the front of the cabin. I've since installed a small battery in that locker and a switch panel and some internal and external lighting. I've already mentioned that the mast is in a tabernacle and it has shrouds and a forestay. The boat is rigged as a sliding gunter. The gunter yard has a set of jaws around the mast, but the yard pivots at the jaws, so when the peak halyard is released, the yard can swing down horizontally. Then you release the throat halyard and the yard will slide down the mast and into the lazy jacks. So let's move to some live video. Firstly, a close-up view of the Huntingford helm impeder. It's easier to direct you to the Dinghy Cruising Association in the UK or Roger Barnes's Dinghy Cruising book than to try and explain it, but it's an ingenious little device that allows you to dial up exactly the resistance that you want in the tiller, or even lock the tiller in any position. You can also see how the scuppers work in the transom and how they drain the water from the cockpit, but any waves from behind would press the flap closed to minimise ingress of water. The storage lockers are very accessible with space on each side of the locker opening available for storage. The main sheet is fairly conventional, and the main sheet block is attached to the rear of the centerboard case, which protrudes into the cockpit just slightly. One of the really clever features of the cabin is the sliding cabin hatch lid. It's built in 3 parts. Each slides over the other. It means that I can get right to the mast and anchor while standing in the safety of the cabin and able to brace myself. There's no need to go out onto the cabin top at any time really. The centerboard case does protrude into the cabin a little bit, but it's not too bad. Up front there's another little surprise, which is the anchor locker. So the anchor hangs in a dedicated rack, so it can be unclipped and thrown out at a moment's notice without having to untangle it from the anchor rope, which invariably happens if you just chuck your anchor into an open locker. And there's a mooring cleat right in front of the mast. The controls all come back to the cockpit, so I can drop the sail from there. The blue line on the left is the peak halyard that allows the gunter yard to come from vertical to horizontal, and the white yard is the throat halyard. Releasing both of these allows the sail to be dropped in about 5 seconds. On the other side is the downhaul, which is needed because there is no gooseneck for the boom. Ideally, I would also like to run the boom vang back to that spot, because at the moment I have to walk forward to the mast to adjust that. So that's probably enough of me rambling on. I don't exactly have a voice for radio. Well done if you've got this far. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments and I'll try to answer them. Other than that, we'll see you out on the water soon for Lunar Blue's next adventure. See ya.
expert.